Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're tuning in across the globe. Welcome to another late night on the East Coast edition of Crime Time with Dutyron and Ed Wallace. Tonight, I have with me my co-host, Melanie Little. She is an attorney, a mother of five, a jack of all trades. She's here with us tonight to break down the Trezell and Jacqueline West trial. Listen, the question, ladies and gentlemen, on everyone's plate today is, has the prosecutor, has the state proved their case? And we're going to talk about it tonight. The case is not over, as you said to me before we started the show, Melanie. I really feel strongly about, Trezell and Jacqueline West. They, in my book, and my book is pretty strong, they've had everything to do with the disappearance of these two boys. I just wanted to say thank you to, before we get into it, Melanie, our Patreon supporters, the channel members, the subscribers, the moderators, the replay viewers. You guys are what makes this a great place. And we both give thanks and praise to each and every one of you guys who send us questions, send the comments in, and respectfully engage in all of these live streams. You guys are fantastic. But Melanie, listen, you and I have been back and forth since March 28th on this case, since the opening statement started. This is a really difficult one because it's a no-body homicide case. It's a no-body murder case. What's your thoughts thus far without going into full details? I know that, we speak a lot about this thing, but Melanie, everybody wants to know what you're thinking here.
My trademark slogan is that I like to say that juries do not leave their common sense at the door when they come in to hear a case. Yes, there are no bodies. There's not a lot of forensic evidence, but I think at the end of the day, when the jury connects the dots among all the things that they've been presented with, I'm leaning in favor of the prosecution on this one, Ron. I know a lot of people have doubts, but there's so much when we look at the totality of the evidence, because that's really what we need to look at here. Not just one person's testimony, not just one day of cell phone location or events, not one set of text messages, but the totality of the evidence. I think I'm leaning towards a conviction. And I'm hoping.
You know what? I hope and pray that you're right, Melanie, because I have been I've been on the fence the last few days, and it's only just been the last few days. And I'm not saying that I don't feel like they did prove their case. I know that the job of the defense, and you know it better than anybody, is to create a little bit of doubt, right? And I'm speaking in layman's terms for our viewers and our friends that are watching. Their whole job, and they're doing it all along, is to poke holes in the prosecution's case. They're attacking the investigating officers. They're attacking the officers who are doing the forensic analysis. They're attacking the people who have conducted the forensic interviews with not only just the children, but with everybody involved, talking about pest control guys, talking about residents, their camera footage, how good it is, how bad it is. That's the job of a criminal defense attorney. And we've had Joe Murray, who, Bill from Police Off the Cuff and Phil, they advertise him on their station all the time. We've had Joe on, and he says, this is our job, is to create doubt, and just a slither of doubt can sway the jury. But I'm confident that, the testimony of the 12 now 12 was 10 years old. I think that had high impact. And we listened to the witness from the Casaloma apartments. That statement and that testimony from that witness, I felt, was the two strongest pieces that the prosecution put forward. What's your thoughts on that, Mel?
I think so too. I agree, because number one, he's their biological son. He's got no agenda. The interviews that he gave the day after the boys were reported missing are very, very telling. I mean, he's a child, and he's in there giving statements about seeing his little brother pass away months before. I mean, that is compelling testimony. It's close in time to the events, and I just don't see how anyone can overlook that or give it hardly any weight. I mean, look, the defense has to do what they have to do. They're going to poke holes in the case because they don't really have anything else. They don't have any witnesses in their favor other than hired witnesses, right? So they're going to attack the techniques of the questioning of the children because that's really the only thing that they can do.
Yeah, no, I agree. We have day 18 and 19 that we're going to talk about. Today was the finish of day 19, and we're not going to get into the specifics of the testimony and so forth. We're just going to talk about wins and losses here. And I feel like, you know, again, at this point in the trial, the defense, the prosecution rested, right? They've rested. We're not going to hear from any more. And correct me if I'm wrong. We're not going to be hearing from any more witnesses. It's just going to be a battle back and forth on the legitimacy of what was presented to this jury. And it's going to be up to the jury to, like you said, they are the decision makers, right? They're going to make the decision. It's not going to be the defense or the prosecutor or the judge. The judge is going to give them the instructions, and they're going to come down with their verdict.
The prosecution can call rebuttal witnesses, you know, just so we're clear. If there's anything that they want to rebut, that any testimony that the defense puts on that they want to rebut, they will be able to.
But we're not looking at new, shocking. What we have is what we have at this point.
Their strongest evidence has already been, you know, given to the jury.
Put forward. All right, let's play a little bit from day 18, and then we have some new footage. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to just be clear about this. The news has gotten authorization through the courts to put out the prosecutor, the defense, the two defense attorneys, their arguments here in closing, right? So this isn't something that we're playing that's not supposed to be played. It's on the local media outlets, KGET 17, AB 23 ABC, Bakersfield Now. They all have it on there. So it's footage that Melanie and I have not seen. I don't think anybody has seen this footage.
Okay.
It's inside the courtroom, and we're going to get to see the defense, both attorneys for Jacqueline and Trezell, give their statements, and we're gonna review it. But this is from day 18, so let's take a listen in because we've got a lot to play here.
Okay, so these are their opening statements, and in their opening statements, they're allowed to tell the jury what their evidence is going to show, and that's what we're going to see them do.
Right, and we're not going to play. This isn't actually it. This is just setting it up. But I appreciate you giving clarity on that, Melanie. Thank you. Let's rock and roll with this.
At 5 o'clock, the prosecution has rested in the trial of Trezell and Jacqueline West, the couple accused of killing their two adopted sons. In the courtroom today, Jacqueline West, lead defense attorney, as she gave her opening statement. Alexia Torres Stallings told jurors today, quote, "There are no confessions and there is no forensic evidence. All we have is the story of a 10-year-old boy." Last week, an interview with the West's oldest biological son was played in court, and in it, the boy said he saw Orson's lifeless body in the fall of 2020, months before the boys were reported missing. Torres Stallings says a witness for the defense will testify that coercive interview techniques were used on that boy, and because of that, he was susceptible to false memories.
KGET.com court reporter Jason Katowski joining us on set tonight. Jason, I know you've been following this trial. You've been in the courtroom since day one. What else did the defense attorney say today?
Sure. Well, Torres Stallings said she's going to call this defense witness, Susan Napolitano. She said she's the one who's going to testify about the statements made by the West's eldest child and how she said they were influenced by others, including the social worker who interviewed him. She said the boy was influenced by the improper coercive interview techniques. She said the expert witness will testify to the social worker engaging in browbeating to make the child, then 10, say what she wanted him to say. Now, Torres Stallings said that this case is still a tragedy. Even when they're done, the defense is done presenting its case. She said it still remains a tragedy, but she said there won't be enough evidence for jurors to find her client or Trezell West guilty of murder and the other charges filed against them. She said there is reasonable doubt in this case and that they will acquit them of all charges.
Did the defense call any witnesses to the stand?
Yes, one witness, the first witness that Torres Stallings called was Christopher Armstrong. He's an accident reconstructionist, and as part of his job, he enhances video images or still images. And he did that for video images, in this case, from surveillance footage taken of the West's home on December 19th and December 21st, 2020. Now, on December 19th, that's the day that the West said they took all 6 of their children, put them in the van, and then took them to Trezell's parents' house. Now, you can't see in the video specifically the Orrin and Orson in there. But the one of the enhancements shows what appears to be, or at least what the expert testified, what he appears to be an adult holding something. And he said that that something could be a child. And as for the video evidence on December 21st, 2020, he pointed out that at one piece of the video, you see the West van door open, but you can't see anyone open it. He said that's because of the contrast in the footage. So that person was wearing dark clothing. Clearly, someone opened that door. You can't see who it is. And he used that to illustrate the point that just because you can't see Orrin and Orson in the video doesn't mean that they may not have actually been there, because they were wearing dark clothing that night, according to testimony. He said they may very well have been there. You just can't see them, one, because of the height of the fence, and two, if they were in the yard and crossing over into the background because of how dark it was that night.
All right. So
Hey, I want to just say something here. I have personally seen that video that they're referring to with the fence in the backyard. Early on in this case, before there was an arrest, Melanie, that video was out there on YouTube. Unfortunately, it was out there, the whole entire video, and it's in my playlist. I actually played it myself because it was out there. People were using it. The news had it on. You could not see the whole entire backyard, but you could see Trezell going in and out of the backyard, back of the house, going to that gate numerous times. And you also could see that footage from the neighbor, him getting in his car, driving away and coming back within, I think, 12 minutes. He said that he hit all the corners. He went around, asked people if they've seen any 2 little black boys. I want to ask you a question here. When he talks about the video and what this reporter was just talking about here with the possibility, Melanie, of them holding an object. How strong is that presented to the jurors? These jurors aren't dumb people. These are reasonable people. I mean, come on now.
I mean, the absence of evidence is not evidence, right?
Yeah.
I mean, essentially his testimony was just because you don't see it in the video doesn't mean it wasn't there.
Yeah.
Okay. Doesn't mean it was either.
Right. And that combined with Wanda West giving her statement of that she was in the van with her son as she needed to go and give him gas money at the credit union. He drove her. She hadn't seen the boys in months and months, 5-6 months, because of
More than that, since February, I think she said, right?
Long time, right? So she hasn't seen them since February of 2020. She gets in a van with her son and doesn't look in the back or say, "Hey, grandma's here, blow me a kiss. I want to just see their faces. I want to pinch their cheeks." Are we to believe as reasonable people, and this jury it's comprised of reasonable people, that are they to believe that Wanda West got in the car with her son after not seeing her grandchildren and didn't make an attempt to just visually see them? The music was up, so I didn't hear them. They usually make a lot of noise. They are rambunctious,
loud, crying all the time, according to all the testimony that we've heard. And she says that she was told that the 2 boys were in the back seat, but she didn't look to see because Jacqueline was sitting in the middle of the second row up high, which led us to believe that perhaps she was trying to block something that was or wasn't there. But pretty sure we have some grandmothers in the chat, and you can tell us, ladies, would you just take a peek at your grandchildren just to say hi if you hadn't seen them through all of COVID?
Right.
And you're just here's the other thing. She doesn't even show up in the courtroom to testify at her son's murder trial. She doesn't even show up. She testifies by Zoom because she's in Washington, D.C. visiting one of her other sons.
It's sickening at best, and for me, this testimony by Wanda West is, for me, the icing on the cake, because she really showed, and these people aren't dumb people. They saw right through her. So these are the things that I hold on to, is that is just a whole bunch of hogwash. I can use the bleep button left and right. I don't want to blow your ears out, but definitely troubling on many different levels and unbelievable, because she sat there stone. She was asked, you didn't, oh, the music was playing. She actually said the music was playing. It was kind of loud and I was grooving to the music or something like that. Like, what? What is that?
But her testimony showed that she had not seen the boys alive since February of 2020.
Yeah. Insane. It's just insane. I want to play the defense here. This is another little clip, and then we're going to go to the 3 clips that we spoke about. But this is local news coverage from day 19, which is today. So I want to play this quickly, and then we'll jump in because we got a lot to cover here. So let me get this up on the screen. Here we go. I'm a little off today, but I'm gonna get this done. I promise.
The trial of Trezell and Jacqueline West, that's the couple accused of killing their 2 adopted sons, Orrin and Orson. It continues today as the defense now presents their case. Earlier this morning, the defense read grand jury testimony showing the eldest child of the Wests initially said he saw the boys just days before they were reported missing. But then later in that testimony, he said Orrin had died and Orson disappeared a few days later, conflicting his earlier report. Last week, you may remember, an interview with the West's oldest biological son was played in court. And in it, the boy said he saw Orson West's lifeless body in the fall of 2020, months before Orson and Orrin were reported missing. The defense attorney says a witness will testify that coercive interview techniques were used on the boy, and because of that, he was susceptible to false memories. And just a reminder, 17's court reporter Jason Katowski is providing daily.
And I want to just say, Jason, as you said, last live stream, is doing a great job of giving us a play-by-play. I know, Melanie, you've been following his tweets closely.
Right.
You know, again, that's the work of the defense, to come up with a contradiction, right? To show that this boy is now not saying what he said when he was initially interviewed, that grand jury, and and going back and forth. This is the job of a criminal defense attorney, and that's what they're supposed to do. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Really, I guess nobody. There's no hands-off limits. They're dealing with a 12-year-old kid here, right?
Right.
Just no shame to the game, I guess. You got a job to do, right?
Defense attorneys, yeah. They don't have a lot to work with, let's be honest. They really don't. So they can say until the cows come home that there's no bodies and there are no forensic evidence and there are no confessions. And the truth of the matter is, if we had those 3 things, we probably wouldn't be here. There probably wouldn't be a trial. So someone else was asking in the chat, why were they reading the grand jury testimony today? And I just wanted to answer that real quickly. That's because the grand jury testimony was not videotaped. So there's only a transcript. So they had somebody reading, let's say, the roll. It comes out like in script form in a book with question, answer. And I think that Tora Stalling was reading her portion, and then she had a gentleman up on the stand reading the child's portion, which confused me as well, because when I tuned into the live feed, I'm like, I was thinking, why does the little boy sound like a man? But then that's why.
His voice sounded completely different, and he definitely didn't sound as how am I going to put this? He didn't sound as comfortable, and he wasn't comfortable in any of these interviews, but that testimony that they were reading back, it just didn't, I don't know. It seemed more coached. It seemed more to the point of where he was just saying, I don't know, I don't remember, maybe. And it was troubling. But I want to just say this: witness statements from homicide detectives, myself being out there and conducted many interviews in the field. It's some of the most important parts of investigatory work is to get somebody's account of what happened as soon as possible, because that same person that's going to give you their witness statement, ask 2 years ahead, it's not going to be the same. The memory is not. Our memories are not like sponges. And when you're talking about a 10-year-old kid, it's quite different. And I know, Melanie, you could speak on this. You can get such different accounts from witnesses as the years go on. And forget about the years.
Sure.
It could happen in weeks. You can
Depending on the age of the child. But you could also argue that, you know, at the time the statements were taken, some of the statements of some of the children, they were all taken immediately after the boys were reported missing.
Right.
They were still under the custody and control of their parents. And so they might not have wanted to tell the truth because they were afraid of what was going to happen to them if they did tell the truth. There was a lot of testimony, and I'm going to trigger warning this, a lot of testimony about boys being beaten with belts, with paddles, with there was a foster child who was 16 years old who was not there when the boys lived with them. But prior to that, he said that their custom and habit of punishment was to put the young boys in a chokehold to make them stop crying.
Yeah.
That Jacqueline would wrap her arms around their neck and wrap her legs around their body. And that was what she did.
Yeah.
So I could see how initially some of the boys may have been very afraid to tell the truth.
And that's testimony that's powerful. This jury is not going to forget that testimony of that 16-year-old boy. And he was well-spoken. He was clear and concise. There were certain things that he didn't recall or that he was confused about. There was just a little bit about some, and Tora Stallings really homed in on the discrepancies and what the report said about the 40 times and things of that nature, because she sensed, she was like sensing that, oh, I've got something that I could really stick my nails into. And she really rode that with him for a little bit. But this boy did give compelling testimony about that whole disciplinary regime there between Jacqueline and Trezell. And like I said, I feel like that is something that's going to stick with this jury. And you know, look, people in the chat are saying, I hate that defense attorney. Of course, you know, you're going to hate someone who's defending somebody who we feel had everything to do with the demise of these kids, the murder of these kids. And I have no love for her either, but she's got a job to do, and that's the court system. I wanted to say thank you to Bill Cannon because he sent $20, and if we don't say thanks to Bill, he can become very angry at me, not you, Melanie. You can do no wrong, Bill. But thank you, Bill, for the $20 super chat. I know I'll have to send that back to you on your next live stream, which is Thursday night. So I'll get you back, buddy. So let's get into the prosecution. Okay, so this, again, let me set this up because, Melanie, I don't want people to get crazy about this. This is authorized by the court. Obviously, it was recorded today, I believe, and put out there. I was actually shocked when I saw it. I was like, whoa, what is this? But it is the prosecution. We're going to listen to both the criminal defense attorneys that represent Trezell and Jacqueline West. There's going to be stuff that's said here that's not going to, people aren't going to like, but I'm just asking everyone to just be respectful when the defense attorneys are talking. I don't want to see any, like, you know, let's not get into arguments here. Let's just listen to this, and then Melanie and I will give our analysis of what we think's going on here. So this is the prosecution. Ugh. Sorry, guys. Put her right on those eyes. Oof. All right, so that's Jacqueline West, as they were calling her, Jackie. So let's let this play.
Just some housekeeping things before I begin. I wanted to introduce the investigating officer in this case. That's Detective Thomas Hernandez from the Bakersfield Police Department. He was the one who took over the investigation from the California City Police Department.
We got to talk to this camera guy
throughout the trial as the investigating officer of where the Wests live. And so that's the reason for the large TV. You'll figure it out once we get through it, but it shows kind of a view of the house. You'll see the backyard, the house itself, and the street to the front. So the television is here because it has better quality than kind of what you sense of that. You have the charges read to you in this case, essentially the murder of Orrin and Orson West by Trezell and Jacqueline West. That's the essence of the charge. And Orson West, there's your photos. Orrin to the left, Orson to the right. Their names when they were born were Sincere and Classic. They were adopted in the, initially they were foster children, but that is Orrin and Orson West. Their bodies have never been found, have never been found. Even with the attempts of the California City Police Department, the Bakersfield Police Department, the FBI, CHP helped, Kern County Sheriff helped as well. Their bodies have never been found. Now, they were adopted back in April of 2019. That's a photo you see up in the middle. That's actually the adoption ceremony. You can see the family of Trezell West there to the left in the yellow. That's Wanda West. She'll be testifying in this case. It's the mother of Trezell West. You also see Jacqueline Trezell, and they're holding Orrin and Orson. Ultimately, you'll hear testimony in this case that the primary source of income that the Wests had during this time was from money they received from the state due to adoption. They actually had 4 children that were adopted. Each one of those children, they got around $1,000. So the primary source of income when they were living in Cal City was the $4,000 they were receiving for adopting these children from the state of California. The names of the other children you see there, Devin, Damien, and also Adrian and Aiden. Those are the biological children of the West. This is some photos from Bakersfield. They did live in Bakersfield back prior to moving to Cal City. I can see them at the park. That's a family photo, all 6 kids. To the right, you can see them in their Halloween costume. These photos are from early 2020 and in 2019. They lived on Lotus Lane. They had an apartment there, apartment number 116. They actually all lived there, all 8 of them. And in the apartment to the other side of that same apartment building, they're in groups of 8 apartments per, was Jacqueline's mother, Maria Martinez, who will be testifying in this case as well. Sometime in May, they opened escrow on a house in California City. And then in September, that escrow closed and they began to move to California City. That is a photo of that residence that they lived at, 10717 Aspen Way. You'll see a lot of photos of that home, body-worn camera of the inside of that home. You'll hear about DNA tests of bedding from that home, of diapers from that home, but that is the home of the Wests in California City. Also to the right, you can see that is their Chevy van. You'll see that in a lot of surveillance footage. You'll see that in photos from when crime scene analysts went through the vehicle.
All right, I'm going to skip forward because he
he
played a lot of stuff that was like, he played the 911 call, but it was really low. I'm going to get to the end of this, and then we're going to get to the defense. I want you guys to hear both of the defense speak. So let me just let this play. It was just another couple of minutes of this.
Says, I think they were there. I believe they were there. I can't be 100% sure because right there, I didn't see them. I didn't see their faces. They also asked the sister, Perla Martinez. And ultimately what she said through testimony is, and you'll hear her testimony in this case, she did have some video calls, but the camera moved around and she didn't really know who she was looking at or who was who. She does remember seeing Aiden specifically, but that's all she remembers. So again, the police are trying to develop at any point, has anyone seen Orrin and Orson? I'm going to go through the timeline, the specific timeline of the move to California City. September 11th, that's when they got the keys from the realtor, Robert Dees. September 15th, that's when the pest control individual, first name Joseph, went to the house. September 17th, 2020, they went out to Cal City. And then I highlighted this date because it's going to become important in this case. September 18th, 2020, that's the day that Wanda West went out to Cal City to watch the boys so that Trezell and Jacqueline could move. Well, when she went out to California City to watch the boys, that did not include Orrin and Orson. That was only Adrian, Aiden, Devin, and Damien. September 18th, that's when Jacqueline and Trezell drive from California City to Bakersfield to pick up a U-Haul. Wanda West stays with the 4 boys. Again, Adrian, Aiden, Devin, and Damien. She had no sight of Orrin and Orson. She believed that they were at the grandmother's, Maria Martinez, in Bakersfield. And again, Maria Martinez will testify she did not watch Orrin and Orson. September 18th, they return. This is the U-Haul that they return in. The van itself stays in Bakersfield. Jacqueline and Trezell return to California City in this van. You'll hear testimony that it's a two-seater. There is no space for children. There is no space for Orrin and Orson. There will be cell phone footage in this case, kind of give a sense of the trips back and forth, because it becomes important, their trips back and forth, because Wanda West helps them unload the vehicle, the U-Haul, helps them watch the kids, takes Trezell to McDonald's, so does these things. And at no point does she see Orrin and Orson over the weekend of the 18th to the 20th. During that weekend, Trezell and Jacqueline are back and forth to Bakersfield in the U-Haul, picking up items. And again, Wanda West believes that Orrin and Orson are at Maria Martinez. There's going to be a lot of video in this case, but listen to the video specific to what Jacqueline says about where Orrin and Orson are when they're moving. She says that Orrin and Orson are with her when they're moving. This is just showing some more back and forth between Bakersfield and California City. Ultimately, again, September 19th and 20th, Wanda and the four boys helped Trezell unload the U-Haul. Again, no sight of Orrin or Orson. On September 20th, Trezell and Wanda returned the U-Haul in California City. On September 20th, again, Trezell and Wanda come back to the house. Jacqueline, Trezell, Wanda, the four boys are all there. They hang out for a while. At no point is Orrin and Orson present. On that same day, Trezell and Wanda drive back to the apartments on Lotus Lane. Once they get there, Trezell gets in the van, drives out, gets on the freeway, and goes home. Again, at no point during this time are Orrin and Orson seen. You'll see through the evidence in this case that lines up directly with what Adrian said, the timeline, when Orrin and Orson went missing. July 25th, 2020, this is a photo of Orrin West. This is the last known photo ever taken of Orrin. It's recovered from the cell phones that were seized in this case. This is the last known photo of Orson, taken in the apartment at Lotus Lane, July 25th, 2020. Now, during one of the interviews, and it'll be played for you here, Jacqueline West talks about how she talked to her kids about Orrin and Orson. She said, I told them, pretend they're not here. Just act like they don't live here. Just go do your work. She talked about what she did with Orrin and Orson. I always keep them separated. I keep them separated. I focus mainly on schooling while they're playing. They don't really play together, but they have played together. I just don't know. But that's essentially what happened to Orrin and Orson. They were in that home, but they were kept separate. And then ultimately, sometime in September, they were killed and have not been seen since then. I've spoke about it, there'll be a lot of surveillance footage we look at. There will be a lot of interviews that we look at. Interviews of Jacqueline, interviews of Trezell. A lot of details that we will be going over. Things that they said, things that changed. And ultimately, the answer to the question of where are the boys will be answered, it's that they're dead. And at the end of the case, I will ask you to return a verdict of guilty beyond a reasonable doubt as to Trezell and Jacqueline for the murders of Orrin and Orson West. Thank you.
So, folks, that was the opening statement on March 28th by a prosecutor. I'm telling you, he's done just such I think, a great job of putting his case forward. Melanie, I mean, we saw a snippet of that. We saw like a minute of that back on the 28th. Right. I could have played 35 minutes of this, but we don't have the time. I think he outlined, and I listened to it twice. He outlined everything that he presented. I just personally was hoping for more. But again, like you said, this is not over until the verdict comes in. Any thoughts on that opening statement?
Yeah, a couple things I would like to say. A reasonable juror sitting and listening to this case and hearing this testimony about how Jacqueline and Trezell said that they took Orrin and Orson with them, classic and sincere, with them while they were moving with their U-Haul for a couple of days. Moving is one of the most stressful things in life. The top three things I think are losing your job, divorce, death, and moving. Those are the top stressful things. If you have testified consistently or told people consistently that these two boys are rambunctious, loud, they cry all the time, and they're basically annoying, which is what they've said to many people and what the other boys have said that their parents thought about these boys, why would they ever bring them with them to move? It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So it's difficult to prove murder or a murder case without bodies. But if a jury has enough evidence to infer that the boys are, and circumstantial evidence to infer that the boys are dead and that it's likely that they did it, they can be convicted. That part of the story makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and I have to agree on that. You know, I listen. We're going to hear what the defense has to say here, and I really don't want people to focus in on this as much because this is, again, they're going to try to pick apart every aspect of this case and to try to poke a hole into procedure. They talked about forms weren't filled out properly. They were talking, but they didn't speak about the testimony of these boys other than to say that they were coerced, that they were mind twists and all kinds of mind games played with these children, and they focus really on the 10-year-old that gave the statement, the oldest now 12. So they went after Adrian, and they are saying that right from the police interviews to the forensic interviews and social workers, and they were talking about collusion and all kinds of, setting up what their conclusions were before their interviews, which to me is just total bullshit. They were trying to get to the truth. And for those of you who are in the law enforcement field, you know that that's what we take the job on to do, is to, bring evil to justice. And the job of the criminal justice system is we hand it off to them and they finish it off. So, let's take.
I just want to say too, can I just cut in for 1 second?
Go ahead.
Also, please remember this. What a lawyer says at a trial is not evidence. It is not evidence. Evidence comes from witnesses and documents. So whatever lawyers say is not evidence. They are making their opening statement to show what they think they're going to prove. And a lot of times what they say they think they're going to prove is never proven. So don't get all worked up about it. But the other thing that's interesting about this case is that the opening statement for the prosecution was given on March 28th. And typically after the prosecution opens, the defense opens. The defense did not open that day. They reserved their openings until they started their case, which was just, what day is it today? Today is Wednesday. I think they just started their case on Monday. I know Jess is in the chat, Monday or yesterday. So they opened then. So the opening statements you're about to hear were just given in the last couple of days.
Yep.
It's an unusual tactic, but I think in this case it was probably good strategy because they got to see the prosecution's entire case and then got to craft their opening statement around it.
Yeah. And by the way, today is Tuesday the 9th. I forgot it. I even thought it was Tuesday. I thought it was Wednesday as well.
Okay, good. It's Tuesday.
Computer and I saw it's the 9th. So let's take a listen to Tora Stallings. And again, this is 20 minutes, so I'm going to do the best that I can to speed it up. But I think it's important that everybody sees and hears what she has to say, and then we're going to listen to Hennessy.
Also note her demeanor is very different in her opening statement than it has been throughout the entire course of this trial.
Yeah, I noticed that when I first played this back, and then you pointed it out to me. I played it back a second time, and I was just like, whoa, yeah. big time. So that was a good catch. Here we go.
For her 6 children. Jackie was wrapping gifts for her 6 children in her brand new house in California City when her 2 youngest were taken. Trezell, her husband of 13 years, was gathering wood to light a fire for Jackie and their 2 youngest children when they were taken. There are no confessions and there is no forensic evidence. All we have is a story of a 10-year-old boy, their eldest child. This is Jackie West, and this is Trezell West. And their 2 youngest children were taken. But their 4 oldest children ends is where our case begins. People versus the West. This timeline is going to be imperative. Throughout the trial, we have talked about December 21st, December 22nd, December 23rd, 24th, 5th, 6th, and 28th. And it is no different in the defense's case that timeline is going to be the timeline to evaluate. What you have heard at this point in time, which would have arguably been discussed in our timeline, is the investigation that was going on during that time. There was a separate investigation that was also occurring at the same time that law enforcement was investigating, and that was Child Protective Services. When we look at December 21st and we evaluate the incidences that are the most relevant for the defense's case, we are looking specifically at where does the priming occur with Adrian. Priming is going to be a term that is going to be used by our child forensic psychologist expert, Dr. Susan Napolitano, who I will talk about in just a second. When we talk about December 21st, we've already heard testimony that there was a proof of life or a welfare check that was made at Wanda's residences when the boys were spending the night there. We have no information on how many officers were there, whether or not they were wearing uniforms, whether or not they were wearing patrol uniforms in patrol vehicles, spotlights, yelling. We have no information as to the proof of life call. But that essentially starts the priming. When we talk about December 21st, we have another entrance from another agency where CPS has now filed this emergency out referral. But remember what the referral was only for Orson and Orrin, general neglect, because there were 4 declarative statements that were made in that referral, that they went missing, that law enforcement was there, and that there was a video of them walking down the street. And because of the information that was provided to the referral, this prompted a 10-day general neglect call. Not immediate, not 3, not 5, 10 days. When we move on to the next day, December 22nd, 2020, this is a rough outline of the events that occurred as they related to the children. At approximately 7 or 8 a.m., Officer Hansen came and interviewed the children. You have seen those interviews now, of which most law enforcement have not seen. He was untrained. He had no formalized training, only on-the-job training to speak to children. Dr. Napolitano is going to talk about the fact that an individual should have some type of training when they speak with children in order to prevent any type of implantation that can then result in false allegations or false memory. Again, this is the beginning of the prime. Around 10 to 11 a.m., there is the FBI and Wanda have now taken the boys to the Jameson Center. We have this information as provided in Sonia Barton's first interview. She notes the time as she takes Adrian to go and interview him. Then we have a second interview of Adrian. that was made almost 2 hours later, 12:55, also by Miss Barton, that will be played now. At around 3 p.m., they were detained by CPS and taken from their parents. Some of you may recall the testimony that was already been provided by Clifton Taylor, the importance of a detainment and that a forensic interview happens after a detainment, because if not, the case, the juvenile dependency case, would be dismissed. Stakes were running high for CPS. On December 23rd, the next sort of priming is that we now know that Barton, Sonia Barton, and court social worker Pamela Castillo are involved in text communications. We addressed that with Miss Barton because the importance of objectivity and a neutral mindset for a forensic interviewer is of the utmost importance, as will also be discussed by Dr. Napolitano. We know now that on December 23rd, the FBI went and did ground penetrating radar into the home of Aspen, of which there was no evidence, no human remains found. We also know that on December 23rd, the van was forensically analyzed by Mr. Bianca and Miss Brown, of which there was no forensic evidence found. December 23rd is when the filing of this juvenile proceeding now takes it into the court system for the juvenile round, or when the detainment is officially filed. The boys are not going back to Wanda. They are not going back to the West residence. 25th, 26th, 27th. We have nothing. But remember when we talked about the first report with Sonia Barton, and we talked about how important that sometimes reporting in a caregiver situation or with another parent oftentimes goes without a report. So we do not know what, if any, information is going on within those 4 days. But what we do know, according to Adrian, is that he has access to an iPad, he has access to the internet, and he has access to find information about this case. And then the 28th occurs. We will know that at 8 a.m., there is a juvenile dependency matter going on in which court social worker Pamela Castillo is present, along with the West. We will know that approximately around 9 a.m., there is some communication about the detention having issues with the initial contact. And then at 11 a.m., there is the first communication from Sonia Barton to Officer Hansen. You will later learn that in these delivered service logs, these are like reports akin to police reports that are kept by CPS, that Miss Castillo tried to make contact with with Officer Hansen and did not. And at a later point in time, had only contacted the FBI, which then she lied to Officer Hansen that she had had any communication with any law enforcement at all. And then approximately 3:36.
Do we have to listen to any more of this?
I mean, I think we're good. What video of the children walking down the street? Somebody put that in the chat, and I was thinking the same thing. I haven't seen any video of the children walking down the street. Have you?
No.
Have they talked about it?
You know, and I guess this means that the defense can just talk about any bullshit that they want to talk about, and you know.
Well, I'll tell you what, the jury's going to be waiting for that video of those children walking down the street, and when she doesn't produce it, they're going to hold it against her.
Exactly. Well, I wanted to place, it was 20 minutes. I got through 8 minutes and 42 seconds, and I think that was enough because I wanted to puke throughout the whole thing. She quickly went from, you know, a different person to right back into the style that she's used throughout this whole trial. Again, some people like Fuzzy Doxy said that she's confusing. She's rambling here. I see in the chat that she's not putting the story together.
It wasn't cohesive. Yeah, I agree.
Clear and concise. Definitely not. LKB says, oh, Ron, my ears are burning. Yeah. Yeah. Well, check this out. We have a little bit more. I have about 10 minutes of Trezell's attorney, and we're going to listen to.
Yeah, this one is really interesting.
Yeah, this one's interesting because again, I didn't see cohesive presentation. What I saw was a lot of ramblings and a lot of heavy breathing, and I thought that this guy was going to need an ambulance at one point. She also was out of breath quite a bit and seemed like she was getting ahead of herself.
We haven't heard him say much at all, so that's why I found this very interesting that he spoke for 11 minutes straight, because we really haven't heard him say much at all. Right? I mean, he's a few questions here and there, but he's really has not been leading the defense. She's been leading it.
Cross has been very short, very brief, and some not at all. He just would say thank you to somebody for coming in.
Right.
You know? So Roro is here in the chat from the Bio family. She says, if their eldest child kept the secret in order to keep his family together, September 2020, and then tell the truth when he seen the one interview and said his dad was lying, is why he told the truth. Yeah. So NorCal Girl says facts, Roro. So let me get this set up. Melanie, any other takeaways from Stallings Torres nonsense there?
You know, she wore her power red suit, which probably was a good move, you know, psychologically. There's a lot of talk about priming here. You know, she wants the jury to start thinking about priming and what priming means and what her expert is going to say that priming means, and how she wants to tie this into, you know, we didn't listen to this part of her opening, but she compares this case to the 1980s child molestation cases of McMartin and Stoll, which were during the height of false allegations against people that were eventually exonerated. Why she makes this comparison, I don't know. Those are completely different cases from this one, where the children are eyewitnesses about things that happened, not about things that happened to them. So I think she's got to reach there. And then she started calling Jacqueline Jackie all of a sudden. Now she's Jackie. You know, because she wants to humanize her a little bit.
Yeah. You know, another thing too that I mentioned with you, I think on our last get together last week, it was a week ago today that we did a stream. Jacqueline, in that video that was outside the home in Cal City when they were masked up, remember that?
The press conference.
Trezell's got his arms crossed the whole time.
They're rocking.
She's doing the rocking, and in that statement that she made to the news, which was KGET 17, ABC 23, ABC, Bayan Wang was there. That's my good friend. He's been on the show with us a couple of times. She said to the reporters, because they asked about current pictures of Sincere and Classic, Orrin and Orson West, she said they took all of our tech, and I have dozens of pictures of them on my phone. Another lie.
Yep.
An outright lie, because that picture, and I gasped just now when we saw that picture on this previous video, when they showed the picture of I believe it was Orrin, the smaller one. No, it was Orson, Classic. When they showed the picture of Classic, he looked emaciated to me.
Yeah, and that was July of 2020. And I don't even know where that picture came from, because she claimed that she tried to transfer the pictures onto her new phone, because of course she got a new phone in December, and none of the pictures would transfer. And then in another interview, she started backtracking and saying, well, I never took pictures of them because they didn't want me to. And, you know, the foster agency people told me not to take pictures.
Right.
It was really, really, yeah, there's just another piece of the evidence.
These two are, again, a special kind of evil, because they're adopting from money. The 4 adopted children, that $4,000 is part of their business plan. It's not about love and raising a child. You're going to hear Hennessy now start talking about Trezell adopted Sincere and Classic because he wanted to bring up 2 black boys with a father. This kind of rhetoric that I hear coming out of the defense attorney disgusts me, because it's the first. Listen, I'd be the first to say I love that idea. I love that concept. But that was not his concept. His business, it was a business plan to get 4 adopted children, because the max that you can have in your household in California is 6. How many children did they have when these boys were alive? 6. If they could have had 18, they would have had fucking 18. Excuse my language. I just
How
get
they
so
qualified for the mortgage was the $4,000 a month. There was no other income.
Yeah.
Oh, and then he's going to refer to them as an artist and a producer. So now he wants us to believe that this is an artist and a producer who decided to foster and then adopt children out of the goodness of their own heart.
Yeah. Let me know what you think in the chat, what you guys think about that, because that, I mean, that's just me blowing off a little steam here, and I could really go into this like and turn this thing ugly, but I'm not going to do that. These
Well, let's hear it. Press play. It'll speak for itself. You don't have to say another thing.
Yeah, these two are just real pieces of shit. So let me just let this play. And for those of you in the chat, let me know what your thoughts are. Let's let it rip.
Let's start this from the beginning.
Ugh,
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Trezell West. This is Jacqueline West. And their 2 sons are missing. Their sons, Oren and Orson, are missing. And we're here because it's easier to charge them than for them to explain why they couldn't find them. They've been married 12 years in March. Trezell will explain, and you'll hear in the interview, that when he first met Jacqueline, her understanding of love and their love together changed his whole perspective on things. It changed how he saw religion. He goes into it with the detectives. That love manifested into a little family of 8. And they were proud of the life they had built and moved out to the desert and got themselves a little house. This is COVID times. Some people hoard toilet paper. Some people drank and knit. And other people's kind of moved on from urban areas because they saw the system come to a halt. That is what the West did. They went out to Cal City to try to be self-reliant. And let's face it, out in Cal City, they are unique. They are a biracial family of 8 made up of couples of brothers that are also biracial. They are an artist and a producer who are trying to be self-reliant out in Cal City, who homeschool their children, and yes, primarily make $4,000 a month to support that family of 8 for taking care of children none of us were taking care of. And this is suspicious to Cal City. And you can see that from the start of this investigation. This is all suspicious to them. And with uniqueness also comes oddness sometimes. And you can see in the interviews when they talk to Cal City, sometimes they say some odd things, but they are always forthright. They are always sharing everything with Cal City PD because they want to be removed as suspects so they can find their boys. And sometimes they say some things that are true, but Cal City doesn't want to hear. In the spirit of openness, Jackie explains sometimes she forgets their anniversary. That's a Trezell thing. Trezell explains it is easier and more hygienic to sit down when he pees. That is the level of openness they are giving Cal City PD so they can check them off and find their kids. They started adopting because they heard about brothers that get torn apart in the system. They didn't know family members could get separated in the system. And Trezell, working as a security guard, realizes all he's getting done is getting paid to stop homeless people from stealing food, and decides, you know what, why don't I spend my time trying to help kids? And when he gets there, he starts to realize there's not a lot of males in the system, let alone males of color, let alone black males who are going to be fathers to black children in the system. He tells this to detectives. That is why he got involved. But he also explains to the detective that once you get involved, after about 60 some odd kids come ripping in and out of your house, after a teenager puts hands on you in your own house, you start to feel different. You have to kind of compartmentalize. And Jacqueline says the same thing. And because of this, they love their children, but love that gets drugged through the system is a little bit different. Cal City doesn't like that. And they'll say it in the interview. And although they have no experience with adoption or fostering, they don't really like some of the answers they're getting. Trezell explains, The reason why he got Oren and Orson and why he was so proud of them is they were two little black boys just like him. And he was going to be a father to them, and he was going to raise them and be there for them. And then he's in his backyard and they go missing. And now he's sitting here on trial because they can't answer where the boys went. And they can't account for this. This is the video as explained in the opening. We know up in here, this is not as good. The TV's gone, but my body would have blocked the TV. You're going to get a chance to see this. We'll go through this later. As we've heard, we're going to review all this footage. Up in here, we know that is where Mr. West is doing yard work. I'll start this. You know, this is getting around the time, right? The mark when we know. And we know that Mr. West turns the lights on once they've realized the children are missing. I want you to look right up here. You'll see some light, something going on right here. And keep paying attention because eventually whatever's causing that's going to show itself. Because Mr. West says once he knows it happened all so fast, he's telling officers he thinks it might be 3 minutes, which I don't like. So the light source is back, and now what's causing that reveals itself. That is a car going down 108, leaving the area. This is the West house. That's a car leaving the area about at the end of the block from their house. You will now notice we're in the time, Mr. Smith pointed out, the 6:20 where he leaves to start to begin that the boys are missing. And we're about a minute out from this light turning on. So they can't.
Hey, I just want to stop it right there just for a second, Melanie, because this is the video that I was talking about that everybody was playing on YouTube.
Right.
So you could see they're not going to show it here, but you see this angle, right? So a 3 and a 4-year-old, even if they were running around close to this fence or even on the far part of the fence, the only way you would see them is if they ran out of the gate, which is right about here where my cursor is. The gate is right around here that they talk about.
Right.
So in this is very grainy, but there's better copies of this. You could see Trezell going in and out. This is that little porch area where the patio is, right where my cursor is. But they had on the side, don't forget, there's 2 vacant lots on both sides of this property. This one that we see here in front of us, and then one on the far side. There was a motion light on that side of that house. And the light that this attorney is referring to was the motion light that was being set off from Trezell going outside and getting out to go to his car or looking around to the side of the house or playing stupid. So the light that they're making a big fuss about was a motion light that was on the side of the house. And there's plenty of footage on YouTube from YouTubers that were going over there. And there was some YouTubers that would jump in the fence and going in the backyard and doing stupid things. But here is the white van right here that you'll see light up and drive away. But I just wanted to stop it here because this is what I was referring to before when we were talking earlier.
Right. I think that he's going to insinuate that whoever is in this van or whatever car this is pulls up is somebody kidnapping the boys. That's what I think he's trying to say. But let's see.
Right.
Let's listen.
Yeah, he is trying to say it, and it's bullshit because there's a road here that cars travel on, and he's going to show the lights of a car.
Yeah, just a car driving by.
Yeah, he's saying that this is someone that potentially kidnapped the boys and whisked them away into the sunset and whatever. But let's listen to the rest. We're almost halfway through.
Explain that. I'm willing to bet most officers don't even know about that.
Is he looking for his notes?
You'll see in the interviews.
For the lights.
They think the 3-minute estimate he gives them is too small. They hear him talk about it. About a minute out from that car leaving. You know, the light goes on when they started to realize that they are not in the yard and they're not inside.
As the light.
About a minute and a half when that car went by. Something else they don't have answers for. There's give or take 41 registered sex offenders in Cal City. It means 41 individuals we put on a list because they are a risk to children. They don't talk to any until January 1st. That's not the 22nd, the 23rd, the 24th, the 25th, the 26th, the 27th, the 28th, the 29th, the 30th, the 31st. I'm not going to put this down, but you know the first comes next. That's when they talk to sex offenders. And all of them know they went to 4 houses. They talked to 2. One, they talked to the person's mom. That apparently was enough for them. And then they talked to a roommate. The others, they don't have an answer for that. Before they ever do this, they get a call from someone named Hector Rodriguez. He tells them he's got information. He wants to talk to an agent. He's worried for his safety. Tells them you need to check a house in Blythe, but I need someone to talk to me. They check the house in Blythe. They don't ever contact him. Hector Rodriguez, with that same birth date, is a sex offender in Kern County who's been out of compliance since 2009. They don't talk to him. He went to them. Got glossed over a little bit, but there is, in the initial paperwork from CPS, when this is starting to develop, as well as in official filings, the definitive statement, there is video footage of the children walking down the street. And now everyone's like, well, you'll see them. No one really knows where that came from. No one knows who said it, why it's written so definitively. They'll tell you they wrote that, meaning that's like a suggestion of something they're hoping to find. It's pretty definitive. It's in a court filing. They won't be able to explain that. A woman in Texas called them. That's fine. Let's continue. Texas, woman calls and says around Christmas time she sees two little black boys in the neighborhood. She says eventually she meets them and she is told their names are Orrin and Orton. And a man corrects him and says, no, your name's Derek. That's never followed up on. Just also, they don't have answers for how inconsistent some of this investigation is. There will be cops that will say there's no diapers, but there is diapers. There will be officers that say there's no chalk, well, there is chalk. There'll be officers that said there wasn't clothes, well, there is clothes. There'll be officers that said there was no toothbrushes, there were toothbrushes. There'll be some officers who rely on the fact that the dogs didn't smell the boys specifically. You will hear from the dog handler that the dog smells cadavers or humans. The dogs that were there were not trained to smell individuals specifically. And she'll tell you when she was there the first night, the dog couldn't do much because the area had so many people walking around through the yard, it was contaminated. And she'll tell you the only job they gave her was follow the route that Trezell's van took to see if the dog finds body parts. That's the first night. Also, the videos we will discuss about boys, the family coming or the family going, even by the officer's account, they can only identify 3 boys. There's issues with that footage. There's issues with these interviews. They're inconsistent. The boys are inconsistent from what they're saying. They contradict what adults that were in Cal City say. They retract things they've said. They've gone back on certain statements. They conflict with each other. And what you will see is interview technique used by Officer Hansen is improper for children. And with Officer Hansen, it also extends to adults. That is a table. That is Miss West. That is his hand on her thigh. He never handled this investigation like she was the mother of missing sons. This was a tragic accident, is what the evidence will show. All right? They don't have an answer for it because it was tragic. But instead, Trezell is here on a murder charge. The bottom line is Cal City out the gate just never thought anyone would take 2 little black boys. That's why the investigation will look the way it did. This is Trezell West. This is Jacqueline West. And their 2 little boys are missing. Thank you.
Wow. What'd you think of that, Melanie?
Wait, where's the part about the accident? Did he say this was a tragic accident?
Yeah, I think he was trying to say that the state The state is saying that this was an accident, that they spelled out an accident.
But
Sure.
he's saying this was a tragic accident. She's saying they were taken. So which is it? Were they taken and kidnapped, or was there some sort of an accident? I kind of felt like that was a slip.
And they're twisting and turning every bit of errors in maybe notes or reports that were written. You know, he's prying on the social workers' communication. This is
The sex offenders.
Yeah, the sex offenders.
You know, the way he said, in the beginning, he sort of blamed us. He said they took in these children because we wouldn't do it. Nobody else would do it. So that's why they started adopting these children. And then he said something about, you know, Trezell wanted to take these children because brothers were being torn apart, and he didn't want brothers being torn apart. Now, I'm thinking back to the testimony of the 16-year-old foster child that came and testified. Weren't his two brothers living with Trezell and Jacqueline? And then they separated him from his two brothers?
Yeah.
Right? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, yeah.
So which one is it? And then I don't know what he's talking about, that Trezell sits down when he pees. That was a whole new information that I didn't need to hear about.
Yeah, he said because it's more hygienic to do that.
Okay. And then he said something about when a teenager puts hands on you in your own house and then 60 people come in. What was he talking about there?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I don't know that I can get past Officer Hansen putting his hand on Jackie's thigh.
Yeah.
We zoomed in on that video and it was, I hope they show that again.
Right. I mean, I kind of zoomed in and enhanced it the best that I could. It was, it looked like it was a shot from California City's interview room, California City PD. So it was a camera that was up high looking down, and he did have his hand on her leg, but it looked like he was maybe trying to console her or whatever. It's something that I personally wouldn't do with a female on an interview, no matter what. If somebody was upset, I might put an arm on their shoulder, you know, let them put their head on my shoulder, but that is the extent of it. So, I mean, again, that's not what they're trying to do here, is just show that they're not doing things the proper way.
They were unprofessional, and he knew he was being videotaped, so I'm not sure.
Yeah. So my thoughts are, you know, again, this is not over till it's over, right? I feel strongly about that, and it isn't over. So again, we put the title here, Trezell and Jacqueline West trial. Has the state proved their case? If I had to say to you at this point right now, we are 95% done. I would say this thing is going to wrap up very soon this week. If they were to wrap up, say tomorrow, what's your thoughts there?
You know, you never know what a jury is going to do, and it's a bet that I never want to take. We've heard a lot more testimony about what happened to Orrin than we have about what happened to Orson. I think if their defense is going to be that the boys were taken, I think that Trezell and Jacqueline's behavior after the 911 call, after reporting them missing, is going to be very telling. I mean, he went out in his car and looked for how long did we say? 13 minutes? I don't think she left the house at all. So, you know, a jury's going to put all this together, and they're going to, I think it's going to take a long time, this deliberation. Yeah. I just don't know what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah.
You know, I think manslaughter is going to be easier to prove than murder. It's going to be a real case of connecting the dots, and a lot of it is going to hinge on the testimony of the child.
Yeah.
And I found him to be very credible. You know, they're going to try and say, here's all the things the police didn't do. And, you know, we're here because they didn't want to go look for them. Doesn't really seem like the parents wanted to go look for them either.
It didn't seem like the parents wanted to do anything from the night.
Right.
And they made the excuse that the police told them that the best were out there looking. But that was just for the first and second night. They never once handed out any flyers. They never got on a bullhorn and said, "Where's my two kids?" They never once did anything that showed that they were loving parents and that they really cared. Jess, the mystery maven, says that Tuesday is tentatively closing right now. Tuesday is closing tentatively. So we'll see. But it looks like they're moving quicker than as anticipated, because as we can all remember, they blocked off until the first week of June for this trial. And we're not even, we're into the not even the halfway point of May. So let's say thank you to Schmitty for the super chat. She says that lawyer needs to slow his speech down. He's been speaking quickly, and every person that he's interviewed, every witness that he's questioned, he said, if I talk too quick or you don't understand me, let me know. That's his spiel. That's what he does.
Yeah, he seems very, he's very emotionally involved in it. I mean, you can tell that he's very passionate about being a defense attorney, and probably believes that everyone's entitled to the best defense. And he's right. I mean, that's the way our system works.
Yep.
Even if you think your client is guilty, which we discussed, I think, on another episode, they deserve a defense. And a couple of things we didn't talk about was, like, they showed a video interview of Jacqueline that was just really very telling. She was laughing. She was talking about how she didn't take pictures of the kids, and then the detective said to her, well, your husband certainly takes a lot of selfies. And she started laughing and said, oh, does he? It just the callous disregard for what happened to their children, where their children are. They're not even asking any questions about the investigation. Like, have you found anybody? It's just people want to put themselves in the shoes of the defendants to see how they would behave in such a situation. And I think that a reasonable person can say, I would never behave that way. I would be a lot more emotional and freaked out about where my kids were and trying to help.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. But I feel between you and I and everybody that's listening here, Melanie, the testimony from the eldest West boy, Adrian, and the testimony from the neighbor, Salinas, I think is her last name, when she said that what she saw at
with the cooler, the ice chest.
Yeah. So I have those two interviews, the two coverage of those two days of testimony, I think is the most compelling when it comes to the actions of Trezell and Jacqueline West, because those two statements, put them with having to do with the disappearance and the murders of, Orrin and Orson West. Not so much the Orson, but definitely Orrin. I want to play it. I want to play this because I wanted to do this. It's only 2 minutes. Let's just play this one real quick. This is the oldest boy describes the death of
Court watch and staggering testimony today in the trial of Trezell and Jacqueline West, accused of murdering their two adoptive boys more than 2 years ago. An interview with the couple's eldest biological son was played in court this afternoon. In it, the boy, who was 10 years old at the time, told investigators that his parents chopped up Orrin's food one night, blended it, and then put it in a bottle. He says his parents did this because Orrin chewed with his mouth open. Well, they went to bed, the boy says, and in the night he heard noises but didn't think anything of it. The next morning, the boy says Orrin was found face down on his mattress. The boy said he touched Orrin's body and it was cold, prompting gasps from the courtroom audience.
And KGT.com court reporter Jason Katowski is joining us in studio now with more on today's testimony. Jason, what else did the 12-year-old boy say?
Well, the boy in the video, he was 10 at the time, and he told investigators that that Orrin died about a week before they moved from Bakersfield, an apartment in Bakersfield, to a house in California City. He said that Orrin had the blended bottle of food and that later he stole a drink from Orson. After he stole the drink, he said that his parents told Orson to punch Orrin for taking that, and that later they all went to bed. He said he didn't see the punch, but he said they all went to bed. He said he heard some noises in the night, but didn't think anything of it because Orrin and Orson always made noises when they slept. The next morning, he saw Orrin face down on the mattress. He left the room to go to his schoolroom. They were being homeschooled at the time, and he didn't know what had happened. He said later he came back and his parents were crying, and he saw that Orrin had vomited, and his color was, according to him, fading. He said, he touched the body, it was cold, and his parents asked him if they should call an ambulance. And they told him, you know, if the police do come, there's a possibility that all of you guys could be taken away from us. So the boys said, no, we shouldn't call anyone. He said he was afraid that he'd be separated from his family. He says in the video that he doesn't know what they did with the body, but that they moved to California City about a week later. And 4 days after being in California City, Orson disappeared. He said the night before, Orson was in the house. In the middle of the night, he heard a noise, kind of a thump, as if a soap bottle was falling, is what he described it as. And that the next day, Orson was gone. So he said that was part of his live testimony today. That was not in the video.
And the parents, he says his parents told him that Orson went to their grandmother's house and he never saw him again, right?
Yes, that's right. He said that Orson was taken to his grandmother, Maria, who is Jacqueline West's mother, and that he never, they didn't explain why he left, and that he never saw Orson again.
And we found out that Maria said that she never had them. So this
Yeah, and that interview that was videotaped was on the 21st of December. They were reported missing on the 20th, correct?
December 21st is when they were reported.
December, my notes are everywhere. Yes, on the 21st. Okay, and that interview was videotaped on either that day or the next day.
Yeah, it was the 22nd, or I believe the 22nd or 23rd.
22nd. It was the 22nd.
Yep.
Something else that was interesting was that Wanda testified via her Zoom testimony. She first found out that the boys were missing when Bakersfield police came to her house.
Yeah, she said they started them. They were watching.
So Trezell didn't even call his mother and say, oh my God, my kids are missing. The boys are missing. That doesn't add up either, does it?
No. And I believe that they were probably not communicating well, because we've come to find out after that she was asking for a photo in front of the family fireplace, and he did not send that photo, and that was before December 21st.
And she was watching the other four boys that were taken to her house on the 19th.
Yeah.
I mean, this was, a carefully orchestrated plan.
I think when folks are thinking, well, the prosecution really didn't present their case well, they're forgetting about these. And this is why I wanted to play this, because this was compelling testimony, albeit it was from a 10-year-old, but it was right after the reporting of the boys gone missing. Now, we know that this incident happened in September. So now you're talking about 3 months, October, November, all of December almost. So it's a 3-month memory for this 10-year-old, but he was able to give it. And now, fast forward 2 years later, you can't blame him for being confused, because we know that he's been with Mama West, Grandma West, right? Wanda's, he testified that he was with her days before the testimony. Do you think that Wanda is such a good citizen that she would say, I'm not going to say anything to my grandson. I'm not going to try to coach him? Bullshit.
Couldn't even show up for the trial.
Yeah.
She couldn't be there for her son who's on trial for murder, for murdering her grandchildren that she didn't care enough about to take a peek in the back seat and say hello to. So come on.
Yeah.
And then Jackie's mother is another horrible witness. That's how Jackie learned how to make money from the foster care system, because her mother taught her, because that's what her mother did too.
Right.
Her mother didn't know their birthdays, their names. She didn't know anything about them.
Is just amazing. Just really amazing. Oh, and lawyer Mystery Maven says, but how does the jury infer the cause of death for Orrin? What evidence was presented that caused it? That's the concern. That concerns me. They didn't go into anything in detail. So that's where, when we talk about 2 guilty verdicts on murder second degree, that's a difficult hill to climb, because we really didn't hear much about second the second child and how he died. Just the thud,
Well,
right?
Orrin, or we did hear about Orrin. We did not hear about Orson.
Right, right. So again, the woman who gave, that's the Salinas woman, she gave the testimony. She stated that she saw them going from the dumpster. And then the boy said he heard a thud at night, like a soap bottle falling. I don't think that that's enough right there. But
Well,
what do
they
I
said, I think there was testimony that Orson did make it to Cal City, but only maybe for a day or two. And I think that event, the thud event that we're talking about, was in Cal City.
Yeah.
I think, because there's no evidence that Orrin ever made it to Cal City.
No. The only evidence that we have of him making it to California City is the statements from, and they were contradictory. So this whole case, we have a lot more to hear going forward. Like Jess said, they are off Friday and Monday, and it's supposed to wrap up on Tuesday, but we still have all day tomorrow and all day Thursday. I'll be listening closely, and I know hopefully you'll be listening too. I'm going to be having an earbud in and going into work. Just a little bit of a note. This has got nothing to do with the trial and the boys. I want everybody to be aware of the sun. It's not your friend. I went to my dermatologist today and got my World Trade Center checkup. I got another skin cancer on the side of my nose and on my back, so I had the biopsies done. My dermatologist is batting 1,000. This is number 5 and 6 for skin cancer for me. But he said it's basal cell carcinoma on my nose. I had a little bit of chunk of my nose taken off a couple of years ago, 2 spots on my head, on my shoulder. So I'm looking at the 5th and 6th try. So be careful in the sun. Make sure you put SPF as high as you can, or put a hat on. And I just wanted to put that out there for all my friends who are, living in sunny places or in places where, you're going to get some sun exposure. Just be careful. So it's the sun is not your friend. That's what I got to say. Melanie, I appreciate you taking an hour and freaking 30 minutes of your Tuesday. It's a Tuesday. Not
I thought it was Wednesday. So I just gained a day as far as I'm concerned. But look at all the prayers up for you in the chat. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. And I want to just say thank you to everyone who has, super chatted and has given great conversation here in the chat. We just kind of it was a lot for us to go over with day 18 and 19. And I really wanted to just get thoughts from Melanie on if the state has proven their case. And I love that Melanie won't go either way on this, and I always try to narrow down someone to an answer, but it's really difficult. It would be unfair to really go and just say, hey, listen, they didn't prove their case, or they did. We, like you said, we don't know what the jury is thinking, and there's things that stick out in their minds because we're just listening, right? Rose in the courtroom and the people who get to see the faces of the people who are witnesses, that has high impact.
Yeah, we can't see the body language. We can't see the video. We can't. So it's so hard to even give an opinion. But juries don't like child abusers. They're not looked upon fondly. So it's not that much of a leap for a jury to say, well, we have a lot of evidence that they were child abusers, and therefore, could they have murdered these boys? Yes.
Yeah. And I feel the chances are very, very high that they did, and that they're covering it up. But
could it have been accidental? Maybe, but they sure didn't do a whole hell of a lot to find them.
Right. Richella and Pete Pranzo, thank you for being here, and thank you to everyone who's in the chat. I also want to say that there's another element to this. Now is not the time or place to speak about it, but I'm going to just scathe a little bit. I'll skate around it a little bit, but I want to mention it's not just in Kern County, but the CPS and child welfare system is broken. We saw it with Thomas Valva. We see it with Harmony Montgomery, Summer Wells, the boys, Sincere and Classic, and the hundreds and perhaps thousands of children who are being abused in the foster and adoptive system, the social, social, social services, the family courts. It's all screwed up. And I want to just say that, you know, once this trial is over and once everything is done in this case, there's still a conversation to be had about where are the boys? Where are their bodies? Where's their remains? Where are their skeletal remains? We want to recover these boys and give them a proper burial, but we also, as part of getting justice, we have to expose the deficiencies, the criminalities, the things that are not getting done to protect these are our future. These children are our future. And if these people that are in place and these systems that are in place that are supposed to be protecting and the checks and balances are all effed up, we need to call them out and we need to talk about it. So that's something that I plan to do going forward, because I know YouTube doesn't really like when people speak about this, but I don't give a crap of what they like. I'm going to use my platform to try to fight for change and for justice for the kids. So.
And there are so many good foster parents out there too. Let's not forget that. I mean, there are people who dedicate their lives to taking in foster children and giving them good homes, and they're wonderful. So this is the exception rather than the rule. But even one exception is too many when children are concerned.
100%.
And the system does need to change, Ron, and I'm with you on it. Let's change it.
Yep. There's a lot of work to do. That's all I got to say. Guys and girls, I want to thank you for taking the hour and a half to hang out with us tonight. As I always like to end these live streams, I say it all the time, and some people say, oh, you know, you repeat the same thing over and over again, but it is part of what I really feel strongly about. I like to say, God bless the world. That is our audience, is the world. God bless the US of A, and God bless each and every one of us here in the chat, but especially these tiny victims and all victims of crime across the globe. Sending strength, prayers, and positive vibes to not only the family, the victims, but everybody that's involved in this thing. Thank you to Melanie. Thank you to everybody that's here. I can't thank you all enough. I'll say it 100 times over. We appreciate your support. We thank you for your time, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you, guys. Good night.
Bye-bye.